Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name's Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, a paleogeneticist interested in Sasquatch.
And today we are reviewing the movie Sasquatch Sunset from 2024. This is another of my recommendations. I'm pretty curious to see if you think this is another typical bad movie or if you loved this one as much as I do.
I
really liked it.
Yeah, I really liked it too.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done.
This is a very polarizing movie.
Really? I mean, it was heartbreaking, but really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Regular listeners will know that we all really love Sasquatch. But maybe we should explain why we are reviewing another Sasquatch movie on this Bigfoot podcast, on this caveman podcast.
Yeah, why do we cover so many prehistoric and archaeological films on this Sasquatch podcast?
Yeah. It really comes down to the fact that it's our podcast and we wanna.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, we could say that I've published a paper on Yetis and anomalous cryptids. So in the Royal Society paper, no less. So yeah, stick that in your pipe.
And if Sasquatch were real, it would definitely be our field, anthropology, studying them.
Right. So, I mean, if Sasquatch was real, we would be the people studying it. Ross is one of the few academics in the world who really has published a paper about Bigfoot, except for a spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't heard any episode where we've talked about that paper. It wasn't a Bigfoot in the end. And in fact, it wasn't a Bigfoot at the beginning either.
No. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Maybe or maybe not, we'll get into the details of that paper, but we're talking about the movie Sasquatch Sunset. I actually saw this in the theaters when it came out last summer, which is very rare for me because despite the fact that we host a movie review podcast, I never go to the theater. So, and in fact, it didn't come out to a wide release. It was kind of an art movie. I saw it at the downtown art theater with 20 other people and with Dave Bach, our graphic designer. And I've been wanting to do it for a while, and so hopefully you were able to access this movie on Plex. Did we all watch it in the same place?
I watched it on Tubi.
Okay.
I watched it on a nameless website that was in Indonesian and full of pop-up ads. But I couldn't get... My computer is too old to download Plex. I tried to download it, and it just said no.
Oh, well...
Well, I don't understand
that's
Plex
behind the
because I
scenes
went
stuff.
to it.
Maybe we'll...
Okay, it told me to watch it on Tubi when I went to Plex.
Weird. Well...
Yeah, just back off. Go and bother some other online site. We don't want you there.
This is all behind the scenes stuff that doesn't matter to any of our listeners. No. Sometimes we watch movies in different places. We figure out where to watch them. I was trying to figure out a place where to watch this one. I thought I found a place. We all found different places to watch it. Apparently, it's not that hard to find now. We've all watched it in different places. We're already going to say off the bat, we already highly recommend this, but it is polarizing, and we'll get into the details. So who wants to summarize this pretty plotless movie for us?
Do you want
I think Ross would be better.
Do you want to try, Kim? I feel like I've done a lot, but
I know, but you're just so much better at it than I am.
I mean, I can do it.
No, it's okay. Well, how about I do it and then you fill in what I am so much going to miss. So 80% of the movie. I'll cover 20. Great. Okay, because I watched it yesterday at 6 a.m. thinking that we were going to record at 8. So it was one eye open before coffee, but it was good. I didn't increase the speed of it or anything. So it's beautifully, it's in a beautiful landscape. So I think Northern California, in the woods, and it opens up on a small family of Sasquatch. So there's a female, 2 males, and a child, an adolescent, maybe teenager type thing. And it just kind of follows their life throughout a year. The older male is a problematic Sasquatch. And he, it starts out with them just foraging for food and trying to eat, and you're trying to get an idea of kind of how peaceful their lives are and how peaceful they are, and that they have an abundance of food to choose from. The the problematic Sasquatch finds a bush of raspberries. It looks like it's gone off a bit. So I think they were fermented because he eats a lot of them, and he acts very strange when he first tastes them. He won't let any of the other Sasquatch near it. He gets quite aggressive when they try to. So he eats a ton of them and then passes out for a bit, and then he wakes up and he's very aggressive. And now I'm forgetting what happened. Oh yeah, he goes and he rampages and he starts to destroy the house that they made, like not the house, but the shelter that they made, because he wants to have sex with one of the posts. One of the posts has a hole in it, and he decides it looks really sexy. So he pulls it up and he ruins their shelter, and they're really upset at him. And he's just kind of on a rampage, and it might have to do with the berries, or he might just be a problematic person. We don't know them well enough yet to know what the background is on his personality. But it kind of comes off like the raspberries did something. Maybe he's hallucinating or something like that. And they are so annoyed with him for ruining the shelter that they chase him away. They do their aggressive Sasquatch dance to chase him away. He runs away. He ends up finding a cougar. And then... now,
I'm really interested to hear what your interpretation of what happens next is. Because...
I don't really understand. I don't know if the cougar killed him, or I suspect that he fell and hurt himself or died, and then the cougar ate him. Okay. Started to eat him. I don't think the cougar killed him.
Okay. Well, if I can just interject with my... I mean,
sure.
maybe I'm also a problematic Sasquatch, but my interpretation was that he goes into the puma's lair, visibly aroused.
Yes.
Oh, yes. He had an erection. Yeah, he definitely had an erection.
And he's given how he acted with the stick with the hole in it, I think possibly he was attempting to know the puma a bit better than the puma wanted to be known, and that's why he got killed.
Oh, that could have been it.
My interpretation is that he got drunk off the raspberries. I think that's what we're supposed to think. But also in his rampage through the forest, he found an amanita mushroom and also ate that. So now he's drunk and tripping.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes, I remember the mushroom. Yeah. But he would have known not to eat that. I guess unless they liked the trip and it just was a bad...
I think he likes the trip. Yeah. I think he's a problematic drunk who is a substance abuser and a sexual pest.
Yeah.
Right. So my interpretation of their erection was just like male aggression, like, like rah, like he was just getting off on just being tough. But you might be right. He might be pervy with the cat.
I mean, speaking in my limited capability as a male, I don't think that would be my reaction on coming face to face with a puma.
No, even if you thought you were going to win?
Yes, even if I thought I was going to win.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you're out there, let us know. Have you ever had an erection while facing down, fighting a wild animal?
Actually, please don't get in touch if that's ever happened to you. Oh dear. I'm just gonna, before you carry on, Kim, I'm just gonna jump in and say that just after we meet all the Sasquatches, the alpha male, the problematic male, mates with the older female, while the two other Sasquatches are looking on, kind of aghast, is what I wrote in my notes. So they're
they're holding hands.
Yeah. I mean, it's never clear whether this is actually like a kind of nuclear family or not. I'm kind of edging hopefully towards not.
I assume that the young one is the young one's the child of the female, and I assume of the credits call him the alpha, or IMDb calls him the alpha. So I assume that the young one is also the child of the alpha, and then we have this other male who is sort of tagging along, and it's unclear what his relationship is to the rest of them. He seems not to be related to them because later on he gets aroused by the female and sort of tries to court her in a much less problematic way. But so I assume he's not related to the group. But the broader theme of the movie seems to be that the Sasquatches are going extinct. So I think that this is a very small group that is sort of banded together because they're the only ones that still exist.
Yeah. Another thing at the beginning is they do this cool thing where they kind of all bang synchronistically on giant redwoods in a kind of pattern, which feels like they're kind of trying to do a long distance call to other Sasquatches, but nobody answers. which is sad.
And did you notice that the pattern is that they knock the same number of times as there are members of their group, and then they do a pause and one knock after that. So when there's 4 members, they go knock, 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 knock. And when there's 3 members, they only do knock, 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 knock. And then at a certain point, there's only 2 of them, spoilers, but they do knock, knock, knock.
I didn't
So they're
notice
calling
that.
to other Bigfoots, and they're indicating we are a group of this many members, and they're waiting for a response to see if there's anybody else. That was really, really
That's
well
really
done,
clever.
but also pretty subtle.
Yeah, that's really clever. I didn't even pick up on that.
But aren't the reports of people who think that they hear Sasquatch in the woods, that they hear noises and callings and knockings too, right? So I think it lines up with reports.
Yeah, I don't know how much all of us know about the Bigfoot lore, but there's this movie knows the Bigfoot lore. Like they've probably been on the Bigfoot forums, so there's a lot of stuff. The wood knocks are a real phenomenon that people report. The structures that we've seen, they build a new structure to sleep in every night. That's the thing that people report about Bigfoot. So it's not the writers like did some research, or they probably already knew a little bit about Bigfoot because the director, the David Zellner, and his brother, they have a short film that was sort of the precursor to this one called Sasquatch Birth Journal 2. It was about 5 minutes long, and it's just a female Sasquatch giving birth. I can link that for you later.
Okay.
But that was, I think that one was a short film that was presented at Sundance, I think, like 2011-ish. And so this is like an idea that they've had for a long time that they wanted to flesh out into a full movie. So it's clear that they just have an interest in Bigfoot, long before this movie.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess what happens next is, so the problematic Bigfoot is dead. They find his body, so they know he's dead, and they decide to kind of move on. So they continue walking through the woods. Life goes on for a while, pretty okay after that. You can tell that the woman is pregnant. Her belly is getting a bit bigger. Then they come across, on their walk, they come across a paved road, a highway. And that freaks them out. So they don't know what it is. They're really cautious about it. They walk onto it, and then once they see that it's safe for them to walk on, they're still painted, like trying to figure out what it is. And they look up and they see that it goes on for as far as they can see, and they freak out. Then they turn around and they see that it goes as far as they can see on the other direction. They freak out. And then they leave the street, still not really quite comprehending what it is. And then eventually they also come across a tent ground. So someone camping, humans camping with a really nice swanky camp setup. But the humans aren't there. And again, they don't really know what they're looking at. But they decide they don't like it, and they tear the camp apart. They destroy everything and pee on everything. And this has also been noted, I think, in the lore, people coming back to the campsites and having it be destroyed.
So just so when they, in between them finding the road and the campsite, the beta male has an accident. So
I thought he was there for the campsite.
No, it's just just
the 2 of them,
mother and the daughter.
Okay, I thought this happened after. So then between this, what happens is they come across this beautiful river, and there's this huge tree log in the river with a big X spray painted on it. And they've seen this X in places along the forest before, this red spray painted X. They don't know what it means. But obviously we know that it's lumber, right? And someone is cutting the trees. So this piece of lumber, this huge tree has been left. And so they're hanging out on the beach. The woman is obviously uncomfortable and getting near her time of giving birth. The juvenile is off playing somewhere in the river, and the male is trying to check out what's going on with this log. So he's walking on the log, jumping on the log, trying to figure out why it's there, I guess, or maybe just playing. And unfortunately, he falls or something, and then that moves the log, and then the log rolls just a little bit because it's really heavy, and then rolls back onto his feet and pins him under. And so the female runs to help him keep his head above water. And so he's kind of fine at that point, but still stuck. So then she starts to try and push the log off of him. And unfortunately, that causes it to roll, to do that, displaced weight and energy where she moves it a bit and then it rolls more the other direction. So it actually crushes this guy more and more to the point that his head is now underwater. She can't move it anymore, and he drowns. So now it's just the two of them. Then they find the tent, destroy the tent. Then she gives birth. And so she makes a nest to give birth with a bunch of fern leaves and gives birth in what is really quite fast, way faster than most human births. So the head of the baby, the infant, was small for the pelvic canal. So this cute little baby pops out, and it's so adorable. It looks like a little Sasquatch with hair and has a little beard and everything. And it's so cute. She bites the umbilical cord, and then the cougar shows up again. So then they're scared because the cougar obviously wants the baby. So she throws the placenta at the cougar, which is really cute because it, takes it like any cat would and plays with the string, and, it's really cute. And then they take that opportunity to leave without getting harmed. So now it's the three of them. It's the female, the juvenile, and her infant, her newborn infants. And so she breastfeeds them. It's really nice. I don't remember anything that happens, just regular days. And then it's starting to get colder out, so the snow is starting to hit and stuff. And they go to sleep, and she wakes up, she's cradling the baby, and the baby is not responsive, not breathing, not moving. So this is really scary. I almost turned the movie off here. But she manages to resuscitate the baby. So she brings it back to life by warming it up and jiggling it and kind of like just wake what you would do as a scared mother, just trying everything you can do to wake the baby up. Finally, the baby wakes up. Thank goodness. They continue on their way, and then does anything else happen before they find the end?
They see the fire on the horizon.
Right, they see a fire,
There's
so
a
they see smoke in the horizon. This is all like evidence of humans encroaching on their land, right?
Yeah,
and then it kind of ends with them walking up to what is obviously kind of a building and a plot of land that has construction stuff happening and paved roads and rocks and everything, and they go up to a building, and then they go up from the back of the building up to the front of the building very slowly, and then we see that it is that famous Bigfoot museum in California, and there's a big wooden Sasquatch at the front that actually kind of looks like the males that they had lost, and so they start speaking their language to the wood sculpture, hoping that it's going to speak back, but it obviously doesn't. And then it kind of ends with them just looking around really confused as to what's happening.
Yeah. But it was good. Like you, Kim, I didn't feel even slightly the urge to speed it up. Nothing happens, but nothing happens in a very artistic way.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't even like checking my emails while I was watching it because it fairly engrossed me.
No, I didn't either.
It can be pretty slow at parts, but it's still like you don't feel the urge to speed it up because like the slowness of certain scenes is really intentional and really sort of necessary to the experience. And also it's a pretty tight movie. It's only I think it's less than an hour and a half. I think it's like an hour and 28 minutes long, so they don't waste a lot of time with it.
No, but they definitely set it up as that they're such a peaceful creature, right? Like their life is good. It's humans that are ruining it. Unless they're drunk and high on shrooms.
Yeah, totally. And well, there's a few like I didn't notice that their kind of communication was their group number. That's a really cool spot. But some things I did notice was that their counting system I thought was quite cool. So at several points you kind of see them. You see the alpha male counting stars. So he's on his back at night trying to count the stars, and he very clearly only manages to get up to 6 and then has to start again. Like 6 is his maximum number that he gets to. Yeah. And then
it's actually the beta male he's always the one that's counting. They all sort of have their own sort of character quirks, but the beta male is the one who's always counting.
I thought it was the alpha male that was counting the stars up to 6, and then the beta male later on was counting, and he only managed to get up to 4.
Oh,
because he was counting. He was counting the eggs.
7 on the tree rings.
Yeah.
Right. But the tree rings, he got up to 7, didn't he?
Yeah, I interpreted it as, I mean, I guess it depends on which character we're actually looking at, because you can tell them apart, but early in the movie, it's a little harder when you're not quite familiar with them yet. But I always saw that as a character trait of specifically the the beta male and sort of part of his character, because he's sort of very inquisitive, which is also how he dies, because he's inquisitive about that cut log and it ends up killing him. But I also picked up on the counting, which it's very interesting, the number to which he's consistently able to count up to. Maybe at this point we should say the beta male is played by Jesse Eisenberg. Were you guys aware of that?
Yeah.
No.
You could tell in the eyes at some point. It's like, oh yeah, it's Jesse Eisenberg.
He's the most famous actor in the movie, and he funded a lot of the movie. He is one of the executive producers, so he was very active in promoting it. He seems like it was a really passion project for him. The female is played by Riley Keough, who I didn't realize until researching this is the granddaughter of Elvis Presley.
Oh, really?
Another famous cryptid.
That is pointed out in the IMDb trivia that Elvis Presley has been connected to paranormal stuff too. She is also the one who sings the song at the end. I think it's called The Creatures of Nature. But there is a second version of that song, and I'll link that in the show notes, where it's the same song, but it's sung by the female Bigfoot character. So it's sung entirely in grunts. Anyway, Ross, did you have anything to tell us about counting in animals? Because I went on a deep rabbit hole dive learning about animal counting, or numerosity as it is referred in the field.
Yeah, so I mean, my thoughts were that with the Bigfoots, if it was first of all the alpha male being able to count up to 6 and the beta male only being able to count up to 3, that this was somehow telling you something about their their life experience, and that as they got older, they became better at counting. I don't know. But yeah, counting in animals is really cool. I know that there's studies that have been done on various kind of corvids who are very good at counting and really kind of recognizing humans. I guess that's a survival trait. But they can count up to, I think it's like 4. And the way they kind of worked it out was really cool, in that they would like have people go in and out of hides, where they knew that crows were around, and I think maybe have food in the hide or something. And so the crows would see the people go in, and then people would come out. And so if one person goes in and one person goes out, then the crow goes in and gets the food. If 2 people go in and 2 people come out, the crow will go in. 3 people go in, 3 people go out, the crow will go in. 4 people go in, 4 people go out, then the crow will go in. But if 5 people go in and 4 people go out, the crow will still go in, because it thinks everyone has left, because 4 is its maximum number of counting. The number of counting shall be 4 and no more. I think that's something I remember reading, which is pretty cool. Other counting animals, parrots as well, count pretty good. There was a famous Hans the counting horse, who was a kind of sideshow celebrity for years in the 19th century, I imagine. And counting horses and counting pigs, the learned pig was another kind of sideshow exhibit, famous in its time. But these are not examples of actual counting. Like Hans, the counting horse, was able to do essentially kind of quadratic equations and all sorts of shit. But all he was good at was following instructions from his owner, who had taught him to, like, very subtle cues that he could make the horse tap a certain number of times. So that the owner was working out the maths, essentially, and telling the horse how many times to tap.
I thought it was that the owner was doing this subconsciously, and in fact, from what I read, the owner was doing it intentionally. Oh, because I thought I read that the horse was able to do it even when the owner wasn't there, and it was that the horse was picking up on really subtle cues among the audience, because when they were anticipating the right number, they had sort of a change in their body language. But maybe that's incorrect. I
mean, that's possible. I mean, it's been a while since I read about Hans, the counting horse. But yeah, certainly horses are smarter than I think we give credit to them.
Definitely.
Most animals are.
Yeah. Whereas humans are probably less clever than we give ourselves credit for. But yeah, interesting. What did you find in your deep dive?
Well, I was reading this really good Wikipedia page called Number Sense in Animals, and then a few sort of pages that it links to. And the really interesting thing is that it seems like most animals that have been tested for their ability to count numbers, or like it's sort of like a primitive sort of thing. There's like two different number recognition, or they call it numerosity, because a number is like a human concept. It's a symbol, but animals don't have symbols. So they call it numerosity in animals to differentiate it from human numbers. But there's like two different cognitive systems that are probably really primitive because they operate both in humans and in a broad range of different animals. And so the one is the approximate number system, and the other is the parallel individuation system. And so the parallel individuation system is that most animals, or a lot of animals, can recognize an exact number up to 4. And this is true in humans. If you have, anywhere from 1 to 4 things, you know exactly how many things there are without counting. And if there's more than 4, you have an approximate sense of relative numbers. So lots of animals, including humans, you can take 2 quantities that have a large number of things in them, and you can assess one has more than the other without knowing the exact number. And that the effect is greater the greater the difference is. So if one of them has 5 and one of them has 100, it's really easy to tell. And like all animals have this sort of number sense. And it seems like most animals also have this specific number sense, the parallel individuation system, where they can identify an exact number up to 4. And humans can do this too. And then the only difference that humans have is language, where we can get an exact number above 4 because we have a symbolic number system that we can apply on top of it. But our sort of intuitive cognitive systems are the same as most animals that have been tested. And because it's in birds and mammals and even reptiles, this shows that it's a very primitive, they're both very primitive systems that evolved like hundreds of millions of years ago. Mm-hmm. And this aligns with sort of something I knew intuitively, and something that I had learned from like my early psychology classes in university, which is that humans can know an exact number up to about 4 without counting. And then if you want to know the exact number above 4, you have to count, right? And I think I participated in a sort of undergrad psych experiment in my intro to psych course, where they were testing number perception in gamers versus the general population. And I believe there are studies that found that gamers can identify up to 5 items without counting, whereas the general population can only identify up to 3 or 4 consistently. Okay. And that's because when you're a video gamer, you're using your sense to track more objects at once. And so it seems like this is possibly something that can be trained in humans and maybe other animals to get it up a little bit. But yeah, if you go beyond 4 or 5, and like in the it's just like in the movie here, where the Bigfoots can count up to like 4 to 6, and then they lose track because they don't have a number system, they don't have a symbol, they're just going and so when they don't have a symbolic number system to apply on top of it, they lose track, which I thought was really, really cool for the movie to do that.
Yeah, you need a placeholder, don't you, to sort of anchor it to.
So I'm glad you picked up on the number and the counting as well, because I thought that was a really interesting part of the movie.
Yeah, and it was just a small thing, but it does, it sent us off on this huge tangent, because it's not, number systems and non-human cryptid primates is not something that many people think about, but obviously somebody has for this film, which is pretty cool. And other thing I was going to comment on is my usual kind of bugbear about biogeography, but they got it pretty spot on in this film. Like, all the animals are kind of California natives. We see lots of deer. I think it's not whitetails. I think it's just kind of wapiti kind of things.
They're what we would call elk in North America, but that's different in Europe.
Yeah. So kind of red deer, porcupines, redwoods, obviously very Californian. We see American badgers. What else? Physalis, the kind of thing that they eat as a group before the alpha male goes off to eat the kind of raspberries. Terrapin, you see as well. Puma, obviously, North American, California. Yeah, so that was good.
The one thing that I noticed, and I'm sure this has to do with the limitations of filming a movie, is that the movie takes place across seasons. It has sort of the only words in the entire movie are these title screens that say spring, summer, fall, winter. But obviously the spring is not spring, right? In almost all of the scenes, there's like yellow leaves on the trees. So it's clearly fall in most of the scenes. There is a scene where there's snow, which was probably filmed in the winter, but I'm sure they filmed all of the seasons except winter in the fall, which you can't stretch your shooting over an entire year just to get every season. So that's fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought that the costumes and the makeup were so well done too.
Mm-hmm.
Like really, expressive eyes, but and face, but still like it's not that goofy Neanderthal costumes that we've seen before or anything like that, right? And it looks exactly what you would picture.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent to me of the good Wookiee costumes from Star Wars that they had. And certainly in terms of body hair. That's what it reminded me of, and certainly the face makeup was really good too. And like you said, the little baby with the beard was pretty cute.
So cute.
In interviews with the actors, they say they studied with a famous mime who Jesse Eisenberg had studied with previously in a movie where he was portraying Marcel Marceau. But they studied with this mime, and they also researched other primates and tried to come up with a body language and behavior that was consistent among all the actors that looked sort of partly chimpanzee or other ape and partly human, so look somewhere in between. And so the movements are pretty good. I was kind of really paying attention to their gait because a lot of the Bigfoot community online talks about like when they're assessing if, for example, the Patterson-Gimlin footage is real, they're looking at how the knees bend when it walks and it never really straightens out its knees, and its feet are always kind of flat and parallel to the ground. And I think that they were probably watching that film to try and come up with some movement patterns so that they looked more Bigfoot-like and a little less human-like.
Yeah. And certainly it's the right kind of region for, I think, where the Patterson-Gimlin film was supposedly shot as well. But yeah, I thought their movements were great. And what's cool as well is, like Kim says, it was no way goofy. It was done very seriously. And, that kind of drew you in. It wasn't, none of it was played for laughs. Per se. I mean, apart from obviously, when they're kind of defecating and peeing on the road. But there are some weird kind of behaviors that I didn't quite understand. So the young child, I don't know if you guys have any ideas about this. She kind of talked to her hand, made a little kind of hand.
Yes. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah.
And there's 2 points in the film. One where she realizes the alpha male, who's I guess her father, has disappeared with the puma. And she sort of starts talking to her hand, like, is it Casa Bonita in South Park?
Yeah, in South Park. That's what I was thinking too.
That kind of thing where you kind of draw a mouth on your thumb and your finger and make it talk. So that it looked like it was giving her kind of information about where her dad was, like as if they were psychic or something. And then later on,
or just comforting words.
She does it again. Towards the end.
Forest fire. Yeah. It seems like this imaginary friend has real information that it's portraying to this kid. I must interject and say that this child is a male because all of the males have penises that hang out and are visible at least some point in the movie. And the little child does have a little penis that you can see at some point.
Right. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not looking for the Bigfoot penises, but it's hard to miss them.
Well, certainly it's very noticeable in the alpha and the beta, but I obviously wasn't looking as hard as you were, Josh, clearly.
I thought that was a really good portrayal of imagination too, which again would separate them from a lot of other animals, like put them on the trajectory of, not to trajectory, but on the somewhere on the hominin tree.
Yeah. And I did go down a little bit of a rabbit hole learning about animal imagination, and one of the closest things is that there's papers that suggest that chimpanzees play with sticks or logs or other objects as dolls, and they carry them around as little infants, like a baby doll, which is sort of an imaginative play There's some arguments against that sort of, misinterpreting. One of the papers I was reading was talking about like Coco the gorilla, who was using language to describe sort of imaginative play. And we've talked about the problem with, over-interpreting the Coco's language in other ways. And reading it is like, I don't know if this gorilla is saying what this paper thinks it's saying, but there is a phenomenon among chimpanzees where the young chimpanzees will carry around sticks or other objects, and it's been interpreted as carrying it around like a doll. And so, there's definitely imaginative play observed in chimpanzees and gorillas and other animals too. But at least one of the articles I was reading had a specific line: imaginary friends have never been observed in a non-human animal. So if we consider this an imaginary friend, it is an object. It's the hand that's actually talking. It was an interesting touch to add this imaginary friend. But at the same time, it seems like it knows things, which is really weird. And I'm not exactly sure how to sort of understand that in the context of the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
See, I took it less that it knew things and more that it was being comforting.
Yeah.
Right. So not saying, the fire over there is caused by humans because they're coming in, but just saying, it'll be okay. You'll figure it out. Blah, blah, blah.
Except that the child doesn't see the body and it doesn't see the fire until the imaginary friend tells him. And in fact, he's sitting out in like the sort of valley in the open with the rest of the family. And the thing starts talking to him. It's like, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." And then because it starts talking to him, it goes into the forest and finds the body of the alpha. So it wasn't comforting him. It was telling him, go look in the forest and find this. And it was the same with the forest fire. It started talking to him and told him to go look. And he walked to a new area and found the forest fire. So it really seems like it has knowledge that the child doesn't have, and it's telling him where to go to find these things.
It's maybe like the Sasquatch version of The Shining.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's very much like The Shining.
Yeah.
I'm sure it must be directly inspired by The Shining. There's a lot of things in this movie that are directly inspired by other movies. Like the drowning scene is directly inspired by a movie I had never heard of called Sometimes a Great Notion, which is based on a book of the same name. The book is from 1964 and the movie is from 1970 something. But it's about loggers in Oregon, and there is a logger who gets trapped under a log and the tide is coming up and his friend is trying to rescue him and he fails at it and he drowns right there. It's very clearly inspired by that scene. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the imaginary friend is directly inspired by The Shining as well.
Yeah. Going back to your point about chimpanzees making kind of toys out of sticks, what was interesting here is that as well as the Sasquatches can do that with twigs and sticks and grasses, and they do that when an individual dies. They bury them, and then they leave these kind of offerings, this kind of art on the burial site. So when the alpha is eaten by the puma, they take his body away and bury it in the ground, and then they make like little kind of look like the kind of stuff you make in scouts, like kind of trail signs, and leave them on top. And the mother and the child do the same for the beta male when he drowns and gets pecked at by ravens as well.
This is maybe where we can talk about I want to call this like Bigfoot fan service, because if you're a Bigfoot believer, there's a whole bunch of stuff you know about Bigfoot, and the movie knows it too. And so the burying the dead is something that the Bigfoot community talks about as an explanation for why we never find their bones or their bodies, right? They say, if Bigfoot is, similar to humans, if they're closely related to humans, maybe they have burial practices. If they bury their dead, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, which is not an environment that's really that conducive to preserving bodies anyway. If they bury their dead, that explains why we never find a dead Bigfoot, right? And then the other thing is the tree structures. Tree structures, I do have to say, we don't necessarily have to take a strong stance on whether Bigfoot's real, but the tree structures are the most tenuous evidence, because anytime somebody finds 3 thin tree trunks that have fallen together and sort of propped up each other in a little bit of a teepee shape, they're like, that's a tree structure. Bigfoot made that. And it's so obvious that the vast majority of them are natural, and the ones that aren't natural are probably just humans building a little tent or something.
Yeah.
But they make structures every night in this film, and then every morning they tear it down, so they make a new one every night. And first of all, chimpanzees do build themselves little nests, and I believe they sort of make a new nest every night, or, they regularly make new nests. But again, if they build these structures and then tear them down every night, and then maybe once in a while 3 logs stay standing and they don't get torn down properly, then that's an explanation for, first of all, why we don't find good shelters made by Bigfoot, and second of all, why we sometimes find tree structures that just have 3 sticks standing up. So again, I'm sure this is inspired by the writers being deep in the Bigfoot community. Yeah. The other thing, of course, is the wood knocks. Wood knocks are one of the most commonly reported things, and also they do these hoots. They actually have a few different vocalizations. So they have these hoots, which they do to call to other Bigfoots across a long distance, and then they have grunts, which they use for talking a little closer up. They never really do the big, long Bigfoot howl like we see particularly on like shows like Finding Bigfoot, where they're trying to find Bigfoots. They let out these really long... They never really do that in the movie, but they do sort of smaller hoots.
Okay. Yeah.
Am I deeper in the Bigfoot communities than you guys are? Is this all new to you?
I think possibly. Yeah, I mean, I did recognize that they were kind of throwing in odds. So this is why you never find Bigfoot bodies, because they bury them. Yeah. And when we look at other species that bury their dead, like humans, we never find their buried remains either. So it really does make sense.
That's very true.
I was thinking when I was watching this, how cool it would be to find a Bigfoot grave and excavate it. Like you find a grave, you excavate it, and it turns out to be Bigfoot. Oh,
I guess in the real world, you kind of get that idea, that same kind of feeling if you're excavating Neanderthal or Heidelberg or
for sure.
Homo dominici or anything.
Too with Neanderthal or Heidelbergensis. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about poop.
Yes, let's.
Okay. Theirs was not healthy. They have. I was like, they definitely have worms or something. Like it's not good.
This is the polarizing aspect of this movie. There's a lot of reviews and reports from people who saw this at the original film festival or at early screenings where they said like up to a third of the audience walked out before the end of the movie, and I think that is
it American audiences. Is it?
Almost certainly. I think this is an incredibly stupid attitude. Anybody who is voting this, ranking this movie as a 1 out of 10 online because of the poop, you are not being able to see past the end of your like snooty, uptight nose, because this is an incredible movie that also it has a lot of graphic poop and pee scenes, which is
but it's
one of the
about
reasons
animals.
I love it.
But it's all done in the best possible taste.
That's it, right?
And poop and pee happen. It's part of life, man.
Shit happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about whether what's primates' actual relationship with poop? Because there's this idea of monkeys or chimpanzees throwing poop. What's the truth behind this? What is the actual relationship that other primates have to their poop? Or, humans as well, because I got a few things to say about that.
Don't they only throw poop in captivity? Do they do it in the wild? I don't. Do they?
That's what most of the sources say. Throwing poop is something that chimpanzees and most other apes and monkeys do in captivity only.
Right, yeah. So I think it's probably something, I could see it being territorial, right? Mm-hmm. But then the poop, because animals, and including apes, behave very differently in captivity than they do in the wild. And so I guess if you were stuck in the wild and some other creature just kept, poking and prodding you and taking pictures and restricting your diet and all this stuff, your only form of aggression was to throw your own poop. We would do so as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So chimpanzees and other apes and monkeys do throw poop, but it usually only happens in captivity. And the way it's often understood is that, first of all...
Did you say captivity there? Was that like a Freudian slip?
That was a Freudian slip, yeah. The way it's usually interpreted is either apes throw things, and if they're in captivity, they might not have access to a lot of things to throw, but there will be poop. So it's one of the few things they can throw. Yeah. Another interpretation is that this is more of a sort of traumatic response in that when they're in captivity, they have a lack of control over their environments, but they recognize that they can manipulate especially people, especially humans, by throwing their poop. Because if they throw toys or other objects, they get a very different reaction from if they throw poop. And so it's, if I throw poop, I can exert some control over my environment by getting a response out of these weird animals that have a lot of control over me, right?
Essentially, it's a dirty protest, like you see in humans when they get incarcerated. It's the same kind of response.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've seen papers comparing it directly to humans in prison because this is, there's specific laws. I was reading a paper where they introduced a specific law, I think in New York State, that was, basically making the use of bodily fluids in prison as a weapon illegal as a form of as a bioweapon. They're like, we have to have a specific law that says you can't use your poop and pee as a weapon in prison because prisoners are going to use their poop and pee as a weapon, which is, again, humans in prison behave in very different ways because of their limited control and what they have access to. It's, again, a parallel for chimpanzees in captivity. And then the other place where we see humans, having strange relationships with poop is in children who are either they've either been abused or have sort of cognitive or psychological problems. And so poop smearing or playing with poop is usually considered a symptom of some sort of abuse or trauma in children. It's often considered a red flag. And so, when we see that in chimpanzees or other primates in captivity, that's what we're really looking at. It's like a sort of a trauma response or some sort of psychological thing.
It's interesting that it's these are kind of quite serious, quite weighty themes that we're talking about. But the whole monkeys throw poop, haha, is essentially a punchline in a lot of jokes. Even
and
our beloved Futurama, in this movie too.
Yeah, but it's probably rooted in some pretty heavy issues, right? Psychological issues, emotional issues as well, emotional regulations and stuff. I mean, adult humans also act out in a poop way when they are having emotional issues. So like one of the reasons why a lot of public restrooms don't allow non-customers to go in is because, like, as someone who's worked in retail or fast food, somebody might go in and, they just kind of sneak in, or they go in and you just let them go because it doesn't matter. You're busy with the customers. And then you go into the washroom and they've decorated it with poop. Right. And that's not an accident. That wasn't a deliberate thing that they did to come in to do that. And then in Vancouver, my cousin pointed out to me that if you look at elevators and stairwells, quite often you'll find somewhere hidden, like up above or kind of out of eyesight, a smear of poop. Someone has just smeared a tiny bit of poop. And now I only try and stand in the middle of elevators and stuff. Because like once you start looking, you do start to, it's not like super common, but you do find them. So there is some kind of link between these emotional difficulties and then.
I mean, it is fairly hardwired into us that the disgust response to feces. I mean, it's one of the kind of most primal instincts that we have. I think just and the kind of disgust response that it elicits is so powerful that it's not really a surprise that people have kind of taken advantage of that when they have no other power to provoke responses from other people.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
We have, I think, two primary poop scenes in the movie. I'm sure there's more than that, but there's two major ones I think we should comment on. The one of them is later after the beta male dies and after the log washes away and they find the crows pecking at his body. The mother and the child start to poop into their own hands and throw the poop at the crows. And I think in this case, this doesn't make that much sense because there's a lot of rocks on the beach, and so they probably would have just picked up rocks off the beach.
I thought it was rocks they were throwing. I didn't twig that. At all.
They were pooping directly, and it's very quick, and it's very subtle. But they put their hands under their butts, so they poop directly into their hands, and they start throwing it at the crows. So that one, I think, because it's so quick, I think it's a little tiny joke in there about monkeys throwing poop. The other one is when they're on the road and they discover it for the first time. They start freaking out, and then they first start peeing on the road, which is probably meant to be like marking their territory, which is not something that apes do. There are lemurs that mark their territory with urine, but I don't think that apes at all mark their territory with urine, as far as I know. And then they immediately start pooping after that, in a very just like squatting right on the road and pooping on it. And this, again, is a hilarious scene and very gross. And I think if we want to be really gracious, we can interpret this as, now this is trauma. They have trauma over humans destroying their environment. And this is I'm exerting control over this strange thing in my environment by pooping on it, and not a typical monkey behavior. What do you think about that? Or is that too generous?
Yeah. No, that's how I took it.
I think there's kind of two interpretations. The one being that it's they're trying to kind of mark it and exert control over it in some way, or two is that it's a fear response, that they've just had the shit scared out of them, and they've never seen anything like this, and so they kind of lose all control. But then I think also, doesn't the pregnant female also lactates on the road as well?
Yes.
So it's just all bodily fluids, and that's obviously deliberate. That's not an accidental fear response. So, yeah.
One of the things I really love about this movie is that it is a very serious movie. And, in particular, the scene where the beta male drowns is a very tough scene. It's very emotional. And so it is a very, it's very serious, and it's going to make you cry if you're not too snooty to see past the poop. But it is also very funny, and the humor, they never take the humor so seriously. They always push it just beyond the line and then stop, right? So in the scene where they're pooping and peeing on the road, pooping and peeing is gross out humor. And then when the female lactates on the road, it's like half a second, and then it cuts off, and that scene's over. And it's like, we're just going to push it just slightly past the line of credibility, or like credulity. And it's very tongue in cheek. It's like, we know what this scene is. We are not taking our movie too seriously, even though it is a very serious and very emotional movie. We're going to push it just a little bit past the line and then pull it back. Right. Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. Another thing is, when the alpha male ruins the structure because he wants to have sex with the hole in the log, he pulls the log out, and the whole structure falls down, and all the rest of them start hooting and waving their arms at him. And he just sort of stands up and holds up the log and points at the hole as if like,
the hole.
He's like, no, I just want to have sex with this. This is a reasonable thing for me to do.
Yeah. That was so funny. Yeah, after that scene, I wasn't quite sure what the movie, because that was quite at the beginning. So I was like, I don't know what this movie's going to be like. But then it was.
The last serious thing I have for us to talk about is, we mentioned already the use of alcohol and psychedelics, and in lots of other episodes we've talked about the animal use of alcohol or other mind-altering substances. So maybe we can comment on that one at least a little briefly, but as something we've talked about a lot before. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting that they specifically show amanita mushrooms, because those are something that humans have used for a long, long time. It's a very fine line between good trip, bad trip, and dead. But I think we have mentioned before that there's some suggestion that it's the reason why Santa is in a red and white suit and why he has flying reindeer is because one of the traditional ways of, I think the Sami have of consuming amanita mushrooms is feeding them to reindeer who have a strong tolerance for them and will metabolize them, and then they collect the piss from the reindeer and then drink that, and that kind of attenuates it enough that it's safe for humans, but still gives the trip. That's I don't know how much I believe that, but it's certainly something that gets discussed.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
And then fermented berries, classic. I mean, all animals pretty much love that. You only have to go into TikTok or your reels to see films of drunk squirrels, drunk elephants, drunk birds, drunk whatever.
The only thing I didn't buy about that scene was that it seemed like there weren't that many berries on the bush anymore, and I'm not sure that
and they were dry.
His body size would have gotten that drunk. Yeah.
I actually found a really good recent review of the animal use of alcohol from 2024 called The Evolutionary Ecology of Ethanol. And it's a really good overview. It goes over like all of the examples and sort of the premise of it is that the animal use of alcohol is probably way more widespread than we give it credit for. But of course, the problem is determining, like, we can see when animals are eating fruits that have a large amount of natural alcohol in them. It's hard to determine when they're choosing out those fruits specifically because they want to get drunk or have sort of a mind-altering effect of it, or when they're just eating it because it's what's available, or maybe just because they have maybe evolved to get nutritional value out of ethanol. Like, for example, fruit flies have a really good tolerance for alcohol and they seek it out. If you've ever had a wine in a house that has a fruit fly infestation, right? Which, happens once a year at our house. Fruit flies I'm sure that's what happens with everybody is. Eventually you get some fruit flies and then you got to take care of them. And it happens usually towards the end of the summer, I would say.
Oh, that makes sense. I thought when you said once a year, I thought you were saying you only had a drink once a year. I was like, what? No. Fruit fly infestation once a year makes more sense.
Yeah. Once a year for a period of a few weeks, once a year, I have to really pay attention to whether or not there is a fruit fly in the wine that I have every night.
Yeah, we get them a lot. In Vancouver, there's a time where it's just continuously fruit flies.
And so obviously fruit flies have evolved to seek out alcohol, right? And so because they want to seek out fruit that has started to rot. And so obviously the fruit flies are not doing it to get drunk. They're just doing it because that's their primary food source. And so it's hard to sort out which animals are seeking out alcoholic fermented fruits for the effect and which ones are just eating it because they're ripe and therefore they have a good nutritional content. But there are monkeys in the Caribbean that will specifically hang out around bars and try and steal people's drinks. And it's pretty interesting that the demographics of the monkeys that do that parallel humans. It's like the sort of teenage equivalent monkeys that mostly want to do that. And then as they get older, they're less and less interested in stealing drinks.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. One other thing we could talk about is that the kind of communication system of the Sasquatch is really well kind of realized in terms of their counting, their kind of long distance communication by banging things together, but they also clearly have a sort of primitive sign language as well. So there's some things that we learn the signs for. So what I think of as the Ross Geller from Friends kind of action, the kind of banging your fists together is sex. Kind of closing your eyes is death, I think. And there was maybe another one or two.
It's not so much a sign language, but one of the ways that the female communicates to the others is at a certain point she realizes she's pregnant because she's sort of rubbing her crotch and then she smells her fingers and she can smell that she's pregnant. And so she goes to the beta male and her child and she's talking to them for like forever. She's like, That goes on for like a minute. And then and they're like listening intently, like she's really saying words that are meaningful. And then she again scratches her crotch and then sticks her fingers in the baby's nose and he sniffs. And then she sticks her fingers in the other guy's nose and he sniffs. And it's like they understand that she's telling them that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Right. Not socially acceptable these days.
No, very much frowned upon. And there are sort of cool bits as well. So the Sasquatches are omnivores, so they eat ferns quite a lot, but they also eat eggs and mushrooms and slugs as well, I think, at some point.
They do eat slugs. They also eat a fish at a certain point.
And roe. I mean, that was quite a cool scene, showing them kind of like brown bears do, kind of catching pregnant salmon and eating the rich roe, which is full of good fats. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And there's funny bits as well, like where they one of them finds a terrapin and it bites its tongue, and there's just some kind of slapstick comedy there.
Yes.
and then also when the female is going into labor, the young one is trying to help out, and it looks like he's kind of as a football receiver, he's kind of expecting this baby to kind of explode out of the mother, and I was kind of expecting, well, maybe that's how it happens in Sasquatches. So it kind of set up a nice little kind of a dodge where you're almost expecting this thing to fly out, but it just sort of gently plops onto the ground.
We also have a sort of general theme throughout the movie where it seems like they are sort of like the peaceful caretakers of the forest, because we have all these different animals throughout the movie who are just sitting there really chill and kind of like hanging out with them, and they never feel like they're a threat, right? And so like there's one early on, the baby is communicating with a porcupine, and he's sort of grunt talking at it, and he does some like hand waves, and then the porcupine waves back at him. There's a scene where one of them, I think it might be the beta male or possibly the alpha male, goes to sit down on a log beside either a raccoon or a badger or something, and he sits down as if he's going to talk to it, and then it gets up and walks away, and he's like, "Aw."
Yeah, that was really good.
We can comment on the overall theme of the movie, which is, pretty standard sort of environmental theme, talking about how terrible humans are. It's pretty evident that the Bigfoots are going extinct. They call every night. They do these tree knocks every night as if they're looking for others. They never find them. And throughout the movie, they're dwindling. Their numbers are dwindling as they sort of slowly die off. The first one, because he was problematic. But the second one dies because of human intervention, because there's a log that's been cut that's floating in the water, and he's curious about it, and it kills him. And so this is a case where he was a good Sasquatch, but it's the human intervention that leads to his death. And then as the movie goes on, they get more and more human intervention. And they come across the road and the campsite, and then eventually the village. And of course, they encounter that forest fire as well. So it's clear that, their population is dwindling as humans are expanding more and more into the wilderness. And also, it's implied that the movie takes place in the early 1990s, because that campsite has a tape player, which is, people have pointed out, is a style that Sony released in the early 1990s. And so I guess the implication is that there were Bigfoots and they were critically endangered in the early 1990s, and now they're extinct probably because of human intervention, right?
Yeah. That's quite cool when it blasts out erasure, and they seem to be digging it for a little bit of time. I think the female starts to cry a little bit, moved by the power of 90s disco pop. But then they destroy the whole camp. I mean, these are kind of really big themes done quite sensitively and quite intelligently, I would say. The whole thing with the beta male when he gets trapped under the log, I mean, that's very much unintended consequences of human expansion and kind of development. So, we can directly see how cutting down a tree that has a nest in it can affect something, but the kind of downstream, literally, effects of kind of logging, where you have, obviously, some of them don't make it all the way downriver to the processing plant. Just having logs floating around, if they get stuck, if they kind of cause erosion of the riverbanks and destroy, bank nesting birds, like, we have sand martins in this country that kind of nest in riverbanks. All these kind of unintended consequences that we just can't think about because it's not in our nature really to think about, and also because they're so random as well that you just can't. Like, there's some studies recently showing that there's problems with small kind of ponds and lakes in pretty much all of the country here in the UK because the flea treatments that dogs get are poisonous to insect life, and they stay on the dog's coats for months at a time. And then if they ever go into the water, it gets transferred to the water and accumulates in the local wildlife there. So, I mean, there's just all these, everything has an effect. Everything that humans do has an effect. And we can't always see what those are often until it's too late.
Okay, Captain Downer.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, that is the message of the movie. It's a silly, gross out movie with lots of poop and pee, but that is that is, that is a veneer over top of a really, really thoughtful movie that literally anybody who walked out of this because of the poop and pee is way too short-sighted to understand what this movie's about.
They would have walked out over the breastfeeding too, probably.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I think you've redeemed yourself with this one, Josh. That was a very good recommendation.
Great, I'll find a really bad one for next week.
Yeah, you've got all that credit to burn now.
Do you have questions, comments, or movie requests? We want to hear from you. Find us on Blue Sky and Facebook at SOTSA Podcast. Send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com or visit our website at screensofthestoneage.com.